Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true first-hand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. Sounding his way onto the show to philosophize with us today is a gentleman who from the first moment I met gave me the all-knowing nod that any journeyer knows well. From that moment forward, he and I connected deeply and have shared some incredible moments together in the rather short time we've known one another. He is a world-class athlete, trainer, and business owner, having brought his passion of human body optimization into his business, Committed HP, which seeks to bring curiosity and innovation back into the realms of fitness equipment and performance, and has recently begun his professional journey in sound healing, which was sparked by a beautiful healing journey of his own, which we will be getting into during this episode. So please give me a hand in welcoming the one, the only, Bryan Osuna to the show. Bryan, my man, round two.
Thanks so
Let's
much,
go.
Man. I am still so jazzed, so excited for this.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So glad to be on the podcast with Third Eye Rye.
Guilty as charged, man. You know, that's what they call me now, guys. You know, Bryan invented that nickname for me and I absolutely love it. So yeah. That's, you know what? That's okay. So I had the Optimized Alchemist, which is like my coaching identity when I'm like doing that, when I'm doing all like my alchemy work. And then when I'm in my podcast, right? Third Eye Rye comes on. That's my podcast identity. I cracked it.
I can literally see three eyes right now with your third eye looking at me.
You know, I've been really called to make new podcast graphics lately, like not necessarily like the logo different, but make it more than just my logo, like how like Aubrey or Joe Rogan or whatever have those things. And that's actually what I'm going to base it around now. So thank you for that idea. I'm going to have me with a third eye just doing something crazy, you know, and wild and silly.
Hell yeah.
That's awesome.
Dope.
Yeah. And for everyone listening, Bryan and I just had the opportunity to do Highly Optimized right before this, and now we're rolling right into this, and we are jazzed up. We're fired up. We're ready to bring in the heat. And so I'd love to start this episode, man, with, you know, hearing your journey into medicines, right? Especially being an athlete. I'm very curious to hear what your views were throughout your life on, you know, any type of medicine, from tobacco to cannabis to anything, right, that changed your state of consciousness, and how that maybe evolved over the years, right? Or, you know, expanded upon it, right? And so I'd love if you could start by sharing that part of your psychedelic journey with us, my man.
Totally. So I think, you know, my journey will resonate with a lot of people. I grew up in a pretty conservative Christian environment and got lots of doses of dare, lots of shame around anything to do with drugs, altering your state. But I was super curious about lots of things in life. So I think my first time, you know, experiencing cannabis was probably age of 14, and, you know, kind of just a reckless kid. The experience with cannabis was an interesting one because it definitely started off with mostly just euphoria and giggles.
Yeah.
And then as life got more serious, then I think my cannabis relationship got a little too serious, and had to occasionally take breaks from that. You know, didn't do too much exploration outside of cannabis through college. I think I recklessly smoked salvia once, which not a fan of that.
0 out of 10 would not recommend.
Yeah, although I've really appreciated hearing. I recently heard on Tim Ferriss's podcast, and then I remember what's his name, Hamilton Morris.
Yes,
has showed like the way that it's been traditionally used, and it's a much different way. Yeah, the way it's respected, chewed, or tea, and apparently a much more honoring and true experience of that plant. And I do remember always having a sense of curiosity around what other kinds of experiences I could have other than just getting really, really drunk or really, really high in college with friends. And I think one big thing that came through a lot was that shame that had been kind of given to me in my childhood about all that, about just anything around drugs would come through my cannabis experiences. And, and on the positive side, that really had illuminated what was kind of under the hood for me to work on personally, now that I've reflected on it later down the line. But it wasn't until, to continue with that stage, I had an extraordinarily psychedelic experience on cannabis in college. So I went to UC Davis, and there's a festival at Davis called Whole Earth Festival. And it's 3 days. A lot of hippies come out. A lot of people just come and sell their art and set up shop, and there's music, and it's generally just a really beautiful festival. And a bunch of us, maybe like 6 or 7 of us, got a bunch of edibles, and I probably took twice as much on the edible side as I should have to begin with. And then I think I ripped the bong about 5 times before going to this festival. And talk about blasting off, man. By the time I even got there, I convinced myself that I was being brought to kind of being inducted into like a cult. And that's what this, and then I was having very clear auditory hallucinations. I was hearing voices, and then I remember there was like I don't know if it was actually a pagan ritual, but there is like these women doing like a dance performance where they were getting like super primal, and they're acting like animals and while they were dancing. And that moment where I walked up to that just sent me on the whole blast off. I was just I was like just tripping, and I ended up sneaking away from my friends because I thought that they were like trying to get me into this cult. And I literally ran home. I like sped walk / jogged home on the way, getting these like auditory hallucinations. I thought things were jumping out of the bushes at me. Oh my
and God.
Yeah. And then I got in my room and locked myself in my room for about 2+ hours. And I thought every single electronic device in my room was monitoring me, was like what's the word I'm looking for?
Wiretap.
Like surveillance.
Yeah, surveillance.
So I like shoved it all in a drawer in my dresser and was just tripping, man. And so that was the first time I was like, even though it was gnarly and really, really uncomfortable, of being like, whoa, we can experience something like this. And even though like I definitely did not want to have an experience like that again, it also simultaneously sparked a sense of curiosity of like, what else could I experience?
Yeah.
But really even recognizing from the moment I was probably, even while I was doing it, like I'm not doing this in an honoring or healthy way at all. And it really showed up in that journey. But moving forward, moving forward to something that was a little bit more of a enjoyable journey, was my first mushroom trip at Coachella, and really feeling like I was playing in a bunch of different like movie sets. But interestingly, that experience, now that I'm doing plant medicine from a much more honoring way, and a way for, self-growth and exploration, that experience was radically different than any other psilocybin or mushroom journey I've had. But it was really cool because like I had the full clear awareness of like, oh, I took mushrooms and nothing's like happening to me. There's nothing wrong, but I'm just like, it's like each place I would go would be like this very vibrant movie scene with like different characters, and there was very clear visual hallucinations, and my brain was creating these scenarios to like piece together all the stuff I was experiencing into like this is really like theatrical experience that was like, whoa, that's cool. And I was lucky enough to have the awareness to like, anytime it got like uncomfortable, to be like, you took something and it's working really well, right?
Yes.
Like I remember Tim Ferriss talked about going to Burning Man and working at the Zendo tent just as a volunteer. And like, I remember I don't know if he actually told people this, or like he said like he wanted to put a big banner up in the Zendo tent, just said, you took something and it's working. Right?
Yes.
Like,
yes. I've heard that.
Yeah. Or you took something and it's working like really well, or something like that. And
it's working the exact way you thought it would before you took it,
Yeah. And you like maybe lost sight of that. But yeah, to have that of being like actually very clear and like kind of grounded in like, I know I'm here, I know what I'm doing, I know what I like took, and like I'm just experiencing this crazy new realm of colors and sounds and interaction with whatever's around me. So those were like my two like most potent, I guess, recreational journeys. But then I guess I'm really giving a lot of props to Tim Ferriss here. I think he was like one of the first people, because I was really listening to his podcast a lot about hearing about using it for healing and for self-exploration in a much more honoring way. And I can't remember at this moment what my first journey. Oh, I do remember now, but we'll put that. We'll put that as a little asterisk, little side note that we can get into. But so that was kind of like my journey of really disconnected and kind of shameful, like I'm like kind of hiding from it experience, and then it turning into a more playful curiosity experience, and then now arriving where we're at today as like really doing it in a much more honoring way.
That's beautiful, man. And it's really funny. I had some notes written down, on the first one being Dare, right? And like how cheesy Dare was, right?
Oh gosh.
And so, as soon as we got to about 12 years old, we started making acronyms about Dare, like what it stood for. And I don't know if this was like a worldwide thing or if it was just in Massachusetts, but what we always said was drugs are really expensive. That's what it stood for. It's like, it was just so cheesy, and God, to think about how many parents got caught growing weed because their kid would be like, oh, I've smelled that before. Like I've heard that happened before. And I'm like, damn, those guys, So
I feel like Dare's going to have to start using different things now that like psychedelics are becoming so much more open and like, like people are exploring that a lot more. They're going to have to rely on something else to keep people from doing drugs, and maybe they can start saying drugs are really expensive, so shouldn't do that.
Well, it's like you think about it too, right? And it's like what they're basically doing. Like we know this being coaches, right? If they don't know their client's pain point, then they're just throwing darts in the wind, right? And so basically, what I'm talking about is explaining drugs in a certain way, right? What real drugs are, like heroin, cocaine, the things that actually can be damaging, right? And rather than casting them in this bad light, like just say no or any of that silly stuff that never worked, be like, whatever, each kid needs a particular approach, right? For one kid, it might be like, this means your dream doesn't get to come through, right? For another kid, it might be like, you'll never get to be an athlete. Find that child's pain point of what they see the only obstacle in life being, and then connect that to these bad drugs, right? Because that's how I feel it landed for me. Like I knew certain drugs were going to be addictive, and then I would have no control, quote unquote, over it. Right. And I was like, fuck that, so that made it easy for me to never try cocaine, never try any opiates, nothing like that. Right. And then luckily, that same type of mindset led over into psychedelics for a little while because, otherwise I probably would have started too early around people I shouldn't have done it with. Luckily, by the time I began experimenting with psychedelics, I was old enough to make wise decisions and also to enjoy them more, right? To actually use them for like the amazing things they're useful for, right? And so, that's just a very interesting point that I thought about when you said dare. I'm like, oh, I know what I'm going to say here. And, nice. You mentioned when you started using cannabis, it was, more so to giggle, right? And then as life got more serious, it started getting a little more serious. And that's exactly like the right to left brain, right? Like as you're getting more and more indoctrinated into your left brain as you get older and you're more like, I want to have a life and identity, all these things, which are great in theory, that can spill over into your plant medicine experiences until we learn how to differentiate them. And that's exactly the very similar issue I had. And I think that's actually a lot of what happens with anxiety or any of these things, right? It's your ego is coming up against something in the plant medicine experience. Maybe it's thinking that you're not good enough if you do these things. Maybe it's thinking that, your parent always said you were going to be like your uncle if you did these things. And now you're subconsciously thinking of yourself as less than because you're using them. There's something there, right?
Sure.
And so it can be a huge sign. Our stories around these medicines, right? What did we hear our parents saying about them? Oh, Bryan, you can't do that. You'll be stupid, and then you're like, oh, whatever, mom. And then later on, it actually does start affecting you though. That stuff is very interesting. And then you mentioned the whole interesting experience you had on cannabis specifically where you were at that festival and you had that kind of like primordial display of that woman dancing and something clicked. So I've had very similar things like that on LSD, actually at Red Rocks some years back, where I went to a show, and I won't mention names of the artist, but basically it was an electronic show, and it wasn't like the person I was seeing 2 nights later. It was much like quote unquote darker, right? So I decided to take LSD and go on this journey, and there was just this very weird energy, and it was the first time where, being a musician myself, I started to really just have a knowing of that whole, oh, I sold my soul to the devil, type thing that jazz musicians used to talk about. And there was some type of interesting thing going on there. Still have no idea and what the conclusion was there, but I did feel something like that in one of my experiences too. So I know what that's like. And like you were saying, with these challenging experiences, right? I came up with an analogy, which is you can still be excited to go in again, even though you had that challenging experience, because it was like you made a bad cake, but you tasted it and you were like, this is going to be really good when I make it the right way. So you're still equally excited to go in and try it again because oh, it was just the wrong setting, whatever. You were able to quantify this is maybe what went wrong. I can fix that. Let's go forward. And you were talking about the last thing was mushrooms and your experience at Coachella, I believe, right? And you were talking about how I've had this experience on mushrooms actually a few times now, and I've started to be able to kind of what I think is quantify how to get there every time. And what I call it is breaking through, right? Where, a lot of times, especially on mushrooms, a lot of it is the werewolf stage where you're kind of becoming the werewolf. And so you're kind of oh, it's just chaotic. And then once you're the werewolf, you're there, right? And you're like, okay, now I can go operate, right? And you're directly connected. For me, Hape, about 30 minutes into the experience will crack that most times. But I've always considered it the difference between being the driver and having a driver, right?
Yeah.
If you're the driver, there's things you got to watch out for. You can't really look at the sights, right? You got to be kind of aware. If you just have a driver, then you're in the back seat chilling, and that's, I think, what you were talking about that I always think about with mushrooms specifically too. When you break through, they're the best. They're my favorite experience because it's just you're in Six Flags and there's no lines and you're the only person there except for the people who operate the machines.
Love it, man. Yeah. The journey at the men's retreat that we met at was, we did that Hape 30 minutes in and dropped straight in, direct connection with spirit, just whoa. So yeah. I'd love to share that journey either now or later, whenever
I'd love for you to share it now, man, because it's such a
Yeah.
beautiful journey, and I'd love to hear your version of it too.
Yeah. Yeah. So this was at a men's retreat, a really beautiful men's retreat that Third Eye Rye and I met at. And yeah, interestingly, I remember when we were sharing our intentions, like yours just grabbed me and was like, you stole my words, man. And so I remember I went up right to you after we shared and it was just like, whoa, like I feel really connected because yeah, your intentions were, it really spoke to me. I actually can't remember exactly what it was, but it doesn't matter because like,
Hey, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the show. I wanted to take a quick moment to let you all know that the doors are officially open for the Conscious Cannabis Collective. And as such, this is the last week you can sign up and receive all of the bonuses we're currently including. This is the last time I will be personally onboarding those of you who sign up with a complimentary one-on-one session, and you'll have the ability to get the Grow with Cannabis course for free during this limited time. For more info on how you can take advantage of this offer, head down to the show notes for this episode and secure your spot today, as we only have so many spots left and they are filling up quickly. Now back to the show. I was just thinking the same thing. I'm like, I can't put my exact finger on what it was. I have a couple ideas, but I know that I remember that exact interaction we have where it was like a game recognized game. Again, the nod, like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was definitely a moment of like, this guy's going to be a special dude in my life for sure. And so many amazing things happened in that men's retreat, and to really give props to the facilitators of like really helping us open up and feel safe and feel connected and in our experience, so that journey could happen in a really beautiful way, in a good setting and on all those things. But I'm pretty sensitive to most medicines, and I've been able to really recognize that and honor myself with that. So I've had some of my most profound mushroom journeys on like 1 to 1.8 grams is like my magical range so far. My first actual ceremony, I got a heroic dose, and that was rough. That was rough. We can talk about that another time, but that was really when I learned like, whoa, you don't know how to let go. I don't know what letting go is, because I've never done it my entire life. But to come back to this, we were out in that beautiful open yard space, or we were wherever we wanted to set up, and I started in the yard and migrated into the couch. Into the couch. And same thing, I opted for Hape about 30 minutes in, and just immediately just blasted off. I was listening to the East Forest track, his album that was made for Music for Mushrooms, I think. And maybe that helped. I think that was really playing in more my subconscious, but just immediately the second I laid down and closed my eyes, just very, very DMT like dimensions. But this was the first time where I was like very certain that there were other beings right there in my experience, and I still to this day don't know who or what being this was, whether it was me experiencing my higher self or a being that was there to guide me. But it's very clear, loving being right in front of me, a lot of pink colors. And it was doing this thing where your depth perception was just like, I don't know. It's just like, there's no such thing as depth perception. It's just like all doing this thing. But yeah, just like a very clear sense of like this loving being just right in front of me, being like, I'm here. What do you want to do? And
like, you called?
Yeah. And at first I was really startled, right? Because it was like there was no hiding. It was like right there. And then so I just I took some deep breaths and was like, okay, this is why you're here. And just, let myself be seen and see this being. And I also had what really felt like the experience of some of my ancestors right there, watching me and supporting me in that journey. And the thing that was really beautiful about this journey for me was it was the first time where I was really an active participant in the journey in a way that, like, previously, even when I felt like I had beautiful journeys, I was like just in this loop of like contract and surrender and then experience something. And then there was kind of this ever present sense of like, kind of like can't wait for this to be over, kind of like I'm just trying to survive it and then get the downloads and get the growth from it. But in this one, I was really like, no, I'm here to participate in this journey. And so I really participated with my feelings and what was coming through, and asking questions and being curious and opening doors and moving into new spaces, and testament to set and setting for really making me feel comfortable to do that, to really participate in that way. But what actually came through after this journey was that being felt to me like Ganesha. And Ganesha has been a guiding entity for me over the last year and a half now. It's probably not been a year and a half. It's been less than a year since. So much has happened.
I think
Holy
December.
crap.
Yeah, I know, man.
Yeah,
trust me. That's when you realize time is not linear.
So I've been really feeling that Ganesha energy with me, that remover of obstacles to get to a more loving, authentic place. And so that first half of the journey was really just a lot of beauty, a lot of openness, and just pure experiencing like source and spirits. And then the second half got a little bit more challenging. I ended up going inside and laying on the couch and, really started working through some more, challenging thoughts and feelings, but still feeling really empowered. I was able to have some of those experiences that you and I were talking about earlier, where it was like, whoa, this is really uncomfortable. And I felt myself contracting and trying to like hold on, and then having that moment of recognition of let go and just like falling into that new experience. So we talked about earlier that Alice in Wonderland, kind of like, whoa, and all of a sudden I'm in this completely new landscape, both internally and externally, of like, whoa, all I had to do is just like take a breath and like trust fall into that emotion that I was experiencing that was really uncomfortable. And it's just like, poof, it's gone. And then something else is there. And just being able to experience that was like, whoa, like I was terrified 4 seconds ago. And now I'm like in bliss, or I'm in I've forgotten even why I was terrified or whatever the next thing. And it was just like, and then, starting to having shared that with my wife after, and she's like, well, we can get to that in just our, regular everyday life, when we learn how to be more intelligent about our emotions. And, Joe Dispenza always says like, our emotions have a 2-minute refractory period when you let them actually like move through you. Right. But like very few of us are either taught that or have the awareness. So we like hold on to them, or we just shove them down, or we like slow drip them, and they end up becoming something way more. And we experience our emotions in a lot less healthy way, for lack of better terms.
Takes 10 years instead of 2 minutes.
10 years, 30 years.
And hundreds of thousands of dollars, trying to get rid of them and avoid them. It's like, God, all for 2 minutes. We could
probably talk about all that for the entire episode. But but yeah, just the beauty of that, and now actually being able to extrapolate that into my everyday life, and of like, here's this feeling, here's this emotion. Wow, it sucks, but if I just let it happen and let it come through, like I'm gonna be able to move to the next experience much more gracefully, and not and really honor my authentic self by letting that energy just pass through me. Um, but to get back to that journey, the final piece of really being in it was really powerful because fear kept coming up. And instead of all the different routes I could have gone, I chose to actively ask, whatever powers, or whatever was there to help guide me, and ask a really powerful question. Well, I'm like, what am I most afraid of? So I asked that question very clearly, and which is a scary thing in itself to ask, even when you're not already afraid. And I got a pretty quick and clear answer, and that answer was, I'm afraid to be alone. And not in like a by myself, like, because I'm very comfortable by myself, but it was like an existential like loneliness of like,
thinking
I don't have like a feeling of there's nothing and no one there to be with me at all, right? And like I've done a lot of personal work, and I've explored my depths a lot, and that had never come through, because I think I told myself like, no, you're really great at being alone. But once that came through, I was able to like look at myself through this lens, like, whoa, like so much of your suffering in life is coming from that deep fear of feeling alone, right? Because I'll never actually really be alone, but that feeling of being truly and existentially alone, that came through, and so now that's been really a big part of my journey, is healing wherever that wound came from, of like whenever I did really feel alone, whether it was in childhood or a past life or whatever, I don't know, but that's been at the forefront of my own healing, and specifically going into some work in a couple weeks around that. Excited and really nervous about unpacking. Excited about the growth and opportunity, but really, really nervous also about exploring that. But so grateful for having that whole journey and everything that happened.
And it reminds me of that saying, like, bliss is any emotion felt all the way through, right? And Joseph Campbell, and I swear that comes up in every episode because it's so true. And this is the thing that I know I want everyone listening to understand, is like, when you go through things like Bryan is talking about, it doesn't, negation acknowledged and accepted. In most cases, it will not make it easier the next time you go through it, right? It just makes you able to remember, well, okay, the last time I went through it, it was okay on the other side, right? And then the more you do that, the evidence for your logical brain will start piling up, and then even your left brain will go, hey, this is fine. It always works out, right? And so that's the emotional resilience you start building, right? Because it's not actually emotional resilience. It's more like mental resilience, right? Because a lot of like your fear mechanisms and everything are going to tell you these things are going to hurt you, and they're working with the best information they have available, right? But they have to become calibrated to realize that, no, actually Bryan becomes a better Bryan on the other side of this, a more happy Bryan. And all the things the left brain wants also are based around you being healthy, right? Just in different ways. And so being able to, have that dialogue between your right and left brain, be able to have the experiences you have and be able to integrate them in the beautiful way you have is so important. And it's so amazing when those things are able to be accomplished, because what lies beyond that is anything you want, because then you can drop into the creator role and realize, like, okay, I'm okay with the same way I'll go do an ice bath, right? Which is, 3 to 5 minutes of like, like you got to find a place within you, to go hang out. Very similar to these like emotions, like Joe Dispenza was talking about, that last, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever, it's like, yes, it's going to feel uncomfortable. And yes, on the other side, you will be happier. That's why, like, kids, they cry. They don't need to necessarily tell you why they're crying. You know, right? Having a toddler, like, you know that kids just cry and they move through it, right?
Yeah.
And because they don't yet have that left brain to tell them, no, you shouldn't because of this, or that's weak, or any of these stories that a lot of us have, especially men, around crying. It's just so
Hmm.
interesting, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I'm glad you brought up the child thing because, for us, we're really working on in the same. It's exactly set and setting, right?
Mhm.
It's exactly what it is. Is like as parents, what we're personally working on is setting a container for Liam to process his emotions in real time
Mm,
and feel the safety to do that, right?
mm.
You know, no matter how trivial us as adults feel like the reason why he might be crying, it does not matter,
Yeah.
right? That is his authentic experience and it's happening,
Mhm.
right? And if we don't give him that container, that safety to process,
Sure.
to move through his emotions, then that's when, um, we start getting repression or things start showing up when you're 35 where you're like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's a perfect analogy for set and setting. And to go back to that heroic dose that I did of like, I'm so curious to ask you,
Mm.
have you come across anything in addition to, or maybe even within the context of set and setting, that really helps people let go? Because I had heard that setting or that saying, but I literally did not know. Like my body did not understand like what
Mm.
letting go was
Yes.
until future journeys where I finally let go. And the
Mhm.
trust fall is the closest and best analogy. It's a trust fall for your spirit, right?
Yeah,
Like I
absolutely.
would I would trust someone to catch my physical body falling way before letting go in a journey, at least
Yes.
historically.
Yeah.
But that trust fall of like, whoa, my entire being, physical body and spiritual self are like we're trusting
Mhm.
the unknown, the
Yes.
letting go into the unknown, and it's so hard. From what I've collected, so hard for a lot of people. And I'm wondering if you have accumulated any ways to prepare or ways of looking at it or skills, tools, or things to implement that help with letting go.
Yeah, a couple things. And great question. You know, the number one thing is I love having people write a letter to themselves before they embark on any type of journey. And I do this a lot with cannabis, right? In my new program and, at retreats that I do and whatever, where I host workshops on these things. And so, like, again, for like any, psychoactive substance, right? Things can get challenging, right? And like we were talking about, you took something and it's working perfectly the way you thought it was. Having a letter written to yourself saying, hey, remember, we decided to engage in this. Remember, we knew that it might be challenging. Remember, you're safe where you are. You made sure to, get all your ducks in a row. Your business doesn't need you right now. You're okay. Like, all of those kind of things. And just kind of write a letter to yourself as if you're writing a letter to your 6-year-old self. Because, when you're journeying like that, I feel like you really are kind of a 6-year-old, right? Like a lot of the things that like are usually okay, you don't know if are okay. You can't drive like you normally do. Like everything's kind of backwards. And so having that authority figure that is you, that is the one who, understands your buttons, understands what you might come up against, and being able to reread that back to you if you have a challenging, part, that is the number one thing that I have found, just as like kind of like an anchor. And
Mm-hmm.
then to go a little more like esoteric metaphysical, biogeometry has been like a new game changer. Just having the right energy in the room and the right like container set where, for instance, cell phones, electronic devices, etc., these things can impact the human biofield, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what is the human biofield? It's a collection of information that pretty much tells the human body how to operate, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
your roadmap. So when your body's like, what is a kidney? It has a mathematical equation, let's say a frequency that reminds it what a kidney is and how it's supposed to function. But the same way that if you were trying to do a math test and someone was screaming in your ear, it would be hard to do the math, even if you knew how to do it. It's very hard for your body and your mind and your spirit and your emotions to process if there's interference in the room, right? So that's why personally I love setting the container with biogeometry and making sure that, like, I wear the biosignatures pendant and the L90. And so the biosignatures pendant, that one is really based on all the metabolic processes of the body, like we were talking with kidneys, liver, whatever. It reminds your body how to heal itself. The L90, on the other hand, is, from my understanding, really good for 5G, which is a whole different animal, from what I've heard. And then also it's really good for psychic protection. So like, for instance, if someone is journeying and they're going to a place, right, they're going to do ayahuasca down in the jungle or something, right, and they haven't done a lot of research on their shaman, right? Let's say, for instance, in this hypothetical scenario, and as we know about these medicine places, we'd love to, be able to say that every single shaman has your best interest in mind, but sometimes they don't, right? And maybe sometimes it's not even intentional. They're just had a bad day, whatever, right? And why you're having a shaman is to protect the container, right, from any unwanted guests, because these guests that are lingerers on your spirit love to trade up, right? So they see someone like you, fit dude, they're like, yeah, we're leveling up. Boom. We want that experience of life, right? So they're going to try to attach onto you when your guard is down. And so shamans protect you from that. And if you're wearing the L90, let's say, for instance, and this is a tip for anyone, one of the reasons I love this, especially for when you're going to a container that's not one you're setting, you wear that L90, it's going to protect you psychically. Now, if your shaman ever says anything about, like, I can't focus, whoever's wearing something needs to take it off, that's a very big sign that your shaman is not one that's practicing with white magic. He's probably, he or she is practicing with black magic. And Ibrahim Karim and Dorea Karim get into this very deeply, and way more of the metaphysical side in biogeometry. But yeah, so that's why, like, for me, the biogeometry is key. And then also having that anchor of, being able to write yourself a letter and bring yourself back, it just saves some time. Like, in my experience, if you're in the right container and you have the right people around you, especially the right facilitators, they'll be able to help you back. But if if you have the exact words that you need to hear, the exact medicine, there's just less time, and that speed bump takes a lot less time to get over. So I would say those are the two things. And then if I were to add in a third thing, I would say some sort of sound healing of some sort, right? Which, whether it be like actual sound healing or just someone having a frequency on in the background, music that's very light with no vocals, right? Something that is a choose your own adventure type song. That's why I like to go no lyrics. But those three things I would say are the things that are currently the top of my list. And then, of course, like, you can add in, the proper nutrition beforehand, like, depending on what medicine you're doing. Say if you're interacting with one that's, that can be challenging on the nervous system, there are products like, I love Symbiotica stuff. I'll preach them till the end of time because they work. I mean, I've been using them for over a year and I'm the strongest I've ever been. They have an adrenal super tonic that's really good for certain, medicines that can put some stress on your adrenals, on your nervous system. And so having those right, like, preloads and postloads, depending on what medicine you're doing, is another, like, I would say, like, secondary thing that I would add in.
Yeah, sweet. I'm really excited now to explore the biogeometry now. Now that it registered to me that we're getting into my studies, and that you're super jazzed on it. Yeah. And two things came through while you were sharing, and this is gonna be great. You're gonna love this. So, just in case, like, okay, so to go back to the journey at the men's retreat, one thing that was super cool with my journey is the first, like, 2/3, I was able to lose language. So if I tried, I could get it back, but if I let go, language was gone.
Oh,
and
dude,
that was the first time in my life where, like, I wasn't languaging everything. And to be able to experience some aspect of your experience or reality without language is, like, such a unique thing, because, like, language can really confine and restrict your experience, especially when your mind is opened up to a level beyond your everyday kind of experience. And information is coming in new ways and greater ways and things that you couldn't experience before. Trying to language it is like, is silly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, like integration often has to come back to language, but
Mm-hmm.
I had a good 2 hours probably where I could just not be outside of the realm of language. And that was so cool. The one word that kept coming through though was and. But the and felt more of an invitational and, like I was communicating with spirit, and whenever I was ready to experience more, I said and like here's this, and I'm ready for more. Like,
Yes.
and so that was really cool. It was like the only word I was using for 2 hours. But the thing that this made me think about is, in addition to and or a letter, just in case you lose language during your journey and you can't read your letter, having like a little kid's picture book depicting someone like taking some mushrooms in like a really silly, like playful way, and then like getting like tense and like locked up, and then letting go, and then like having this really still like a 5-page kids book, like picture book, where like if you're deep in it and you don't have words and you can't let go, you just flip through and be like, oh yeah, that's what I gotta do.
Dude, that's amazing. I love that. And one of the funny things I thought about right there, right, is I've had a couple experiences. One was just on cannabis, right? Where I actually, like, of course, we do a ton of language work, right? That's what a lot of my background is language stuff. And I'm a huge language nerd. And also, to use and again, right? I started actually like really feeling like if you could say the right brain side of all the language training I knew. The left brain was like, yes, I understand words create reality. I understand if you use more positive words, you'll start getting more positive results, because regardless of the results you get, they're going to be more positive to you because that's the only language you use and understand. I knew all this stuff. Yet one time I actually started I was like at my buddy Eddie's house for Friendsgiving. And he had a bunch of people there, and I brought some Tahiti lime, some Divine Storm. You know how it is, right? And we were doing some breath work, and I was just hitting a lot of bags, right? And it was exactly what was meant to happen, because I found a moment where I was like, I want to sit on this couch and just close my eyes. And so I did that. And one of the women there, she had such a nice voice, and I was just listening to her words as if they weren't words, but just sounds instead, right? And I noticed how the vibrational energy of those words were translating into a straight line, if you will, right? So very similar to like a heartbeat, right? Or something like that. Like, when you're hearing and, it's kind of like it continues going. When you hear but, it stops, right? And then like it cuts off the flow of energy. And so I started actually hearing don't, wouldn't, like how negations are affecting the actual vibrant resonance, right? And I started feeling the difference in energy in my body, like somatically, when I heard negations like don't versus you can do that, right? Like, the difference. And so it really helped me see a lot of what you were talking about, how like really all words are ways, are like agreed upon symbols which convey a certain energy which we agree on, right? So we know tree gives us an image of a tree in our head, right? Because it's a symbol, right? But if you said tree to someone who speaks a different language, they wouldn't know what it means, right? Because it's not agreed upon. But that's a very interesting concept of like words as vibration, but actually having the real experience of words simply as vibration and what their purpose really is, right? Like, you ready for more, you're like, and boom, then it happens. It's like, oh, I'm creating this. I could say no and, right? And then nothing else happens. Or I could say and then it happens. It's really cool to have those experiences, because for me, it changes things in how I operate, right? And that's, again, what people talk about in psychedelics, right? And then by talking about them like we are, you then are able to integrate and remember, and then your brain goes, oh yeah, that made sense and that felt good. Okay, we want that. The left brain and the right brain are in accordance with it, right? They agree, because the left and right brain are both like, he was better, or like a happier version of himself when he had that. So let's give it to him,
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah. And one thing I just wanted to share to anyone listening, that is a tool that's really powerful, whether you're navigating a challenging spirit experience in or journey, or just in everyday life. is giving yourself permission to make like a humming or sigh like sound, right? Because even just at a pure physiological level, any sound that has a good vibrational component to it in your body is going to stimulate that vagus nerve and help down regulate you into parasympathetic and out of sympathetic fight or flight. And like most journeys, you can at least make a hum or a sigh, right? Unless, DMT maybe, but if you're in a journey where you're really having to do navigating,
mm-hmm.
man, like having giving yourself permission to like hum or like really let out a big sigh can totally shift your state. And having that physical state shift can totally change the trajectory of your experience, right? We can make shifts of our experience from top down or bottom up. They both work. But sometimes one is more powerful in a given moment. And yeah, just being able to do that, in addition to just being able to connect with your breath, find a deep breath, a deep parasympathetic breath is really, there's such valuable tools in a journey.
I 100% agree, man. And, that brings me to a great point, which is I would love to talk about, sound healing. I know it's a big part of your life, and I'd love to hear how you got into that. I've heard a little bit of the story, and I'd love to dive into it. I think it's so powerful and potent, and I know the listeners would love it as well. And it really it gets us to present day Bryan, right? Like where you are now too, right? And where you see yourself heading with all this too. And that's I love this part of the conversation, because now it's like with someone like yourself who's so good at visualizing and manifesting. I mean, it's so amazing to be able to co-create that dream with you. And like you said, talk about it with hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people and make it more of a reality. And so, yeah, man, take us on that journey. How did sound healing Bryan?
So on the Highly Optimized podcast, we were talking about intuition a bit. And, I was lucky enough to really realize I had a very powerful intuition early in my life, going back as far as 10 years ago, 10 years ago, when I invented my first product, the mobile roller. And then actually both of my inventions, the mobile roller and the Better Band, just having this this inner knowing. And for someone who is curious about intuition, one way that intuition comes through me is it feels exactly like almost like deja vu, but there's no second guessing. It's just it's like remembering the answer to a question that the answer to, but you've never had that answer enter your mind before, and you just it's there.
It's a knowing.
Yeah. And it feels very similar to deja vu, but with deja vu, I'm no, that was just deja vu. I don't really know if people have explored what deja vu is, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But for me, it's very clear, all of a sudden some knowing will enter my being, and I just oh yeah, I need to turn this way. And it's but about this time last year, I had just an intuitive download that some new gift or profession was coming to me. But the weird thing was, this was the first time I had an intuition where there was a big question mark. I don't know what that means. There's no action attached to it yet. There's just get ready. Something's coming.
Yeah.
And just to set the context, I had very little experience with sound and vibration, sound healing and vibrational medicine before. But I always knew I had really strong connection to sound. I had interestingly figured out that I experience music more through my body than through my ears. Why I love bass music so much.
Yep. Bryan and I have a mutual love of that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That we connected deeply at the retreat around bass music.
Yes.
But I really translate, and I experience music very somatically, very in my body, not so much in my ears. Like I do, but anything that comes through my ears gets more tethered to the somatic experience of it. So I've always known like I have this very deep spiritual connection to music and sound. And to fast forward, not long before that men's retreat, so it might have been like August, September, a friend of mine who I felt really safe around was like an amazing body worker and journey guide. And he works primarily with mushrooms, but also with ketamine. So for me, I was in a time where I was really aware that a lot of my physical pain and tension was coming from emotions, stuck emotions, old emotions, me not letting go of emotions as they came through, as we kind of talked about. So having known the power of like somatic release in a journey and how that can sometimes be opened up, I reached out to this person and said, would you be willing to do a body work journey and hold space and guide and do the body work? And he, it is something that he does. So we did it, and he was, he kind of wanted me to do psilocybin, but I had a very strong calling to do the ketamine, despite having sensing a little bit of a stigma around it. I still, there is a quite a bit of a lingering stigma around ketamine. Most people, if you mention ketamine, oh, it's a horse tranquilizer. Like, yeah, like great, and so much more. But
and mushrooms grow from poop. It's like
exactly, exactly. So I did this journey, and so to encapsulate, an extremely abstract and ethereal experience into words, into language, I just blasted off and essentially very clearly turned into light and sound. And I was basically this floating field of light and different sounds. And at the visual level, the closest thing I can explain was the Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights. So my body was just this like abstract, like moving field of light.
Yeah.
And as the guide was doing the body work, there would be a very clear sound that would come out of my mouth. Like, luckily I had done a lot of somatic work, letting myself make noise. And I think that really helped me unlock. And then once I surrendered, there was zero awareness or control over the sound. It was literally like someone playing a keyboard, but I was the keyboard. And I had the very clear experience that each tissue in my body holds a different sound, a different frequency. That what I didn't have a clear sense of, like, was the sound that was coming out like the true harmonized frequency or the trapped emotion. So, I didn't get to that, but the power of the experience was powerful nonetheless, of like, whoa, when you work on my, IT band or quad, like this sound comes out like, ah, or like when he works on my diaphragm, it's like, and like just to have like my conscious mind out of the way and just being a witness of my body just as sound and light and that interaction and like to be an instrument, like, and there's like a metaphor there, I feel like, of being an instrument, but like in being it,
yes,
or more like like a metaphor, or even like a pun as well. But
give me like 3 seconds. My brain's already turning. I'm like, I gotta figure out something here. I'll let you know.
But yeah, man, wow, that was like, I had no idea that journey was coming, and it just like blew me away. And it was so real. Those experiences, like, this is more real than like reality itself, right? Like
Yes.
if that part of our brain that was like trying to make sense of the exponential amount of energy information around us and like squash it down into this hyper simplified experience that we have when we're walking around, like it would look more like this. Right.
Yes.
And just having that knowing of like, whoa, this is very real. And wow, yeah, so I came out of that not really knowing what to make of it other than like that happened.
That was a
And
thing.
that was a real thing.
Yeah.
And to fast forward, I was listening to a podcast where oh man, I wish I had memorized her name now, but I think her book is just called Vibrational Medicine. And it's I think she's a neuroscientist whose husband is a sound healer, and she's super into vibrational medicine and sound healing. And as soon as I started hearing her talk about it, I just had that the completion of the intuition of like, that's it. That's it. But I don't think I would have been able to have that intuition, that second download, at least when and how I did, without that journey that I went on that was like, showed me like, hey, this is what we are, and this is how we can heal, and this is what we need, how we need to, interact and work with each other is through light and sound, right? So yeah, man, that was the journey.
I forget who, I think it was Tesla or Einstein, something like that, who said, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of sound and frequency, or sound and vibration, one or the other. And
I believe that one was Tesla.
Yeah, it was Tesla, because the first time I ever did 5-MeO, I remember as soon as I like hit it hard enough that I was starting to white out, I remember they put a sound bowl in my chest, and they started, and it was a big crystal sound bowl, and they started singing this thing. And I remember the first thought that went through my head, like as my ego was just disintegrating, was like, Tesla was right. Like it just like, it was so funny because I knew that to be true too. And I can't, it'd be very challenging to try to quantify what I actually felt, but I know exactly what I mean when you say like, we are sound and vibration. Like that is 100% true to me. And to me, it felt like the truth, not my version of it, because up until then, I might have known it intellectually. I knew the quote. I obviously trust Tesla, that kind of stuff. But,
right.
It's the difference between knowing something and feeling something, right? I felt it, and it felt like the truth. Like, hey, whether or not you're okay with it, this is what it is, right? Like it felt like very neutral. And it was such an incredible experience. And it changed my life forever. Ever since then, the way I've looked at music, especially as a musician, has changed. The way I look at frequency, frequencies in general have changed. And actually, the way that I actually feel my body, like Tai Chi, Qigong, things like that, feeling that very subtle vibration that actually isn't so subtle if you, can teach yourself how to tune into it, is just so powerful. And it's all unlocked with sound. Yeah, man. So it's just so interesting, because sound really allowed me to access so much more depth to who and what I believe to be, right? Which is, again, sound, vibration, love, all of these things, because really love is just a vibration as well, right? Not to get like super deep, but also this is the podcast to do it on. Like, if we want to know who and what we truly are, I personally believe the best way to get there is to experience it yourself. Like you can read about vanilla ice cream until you're like blue in the face, but at some point you just got to go try it. You're never going to understand what vanilla ice cream is until you go try it. And I feel like sound allows you to experience being what and who you truly are in some way, shape,
Absolutely,
man.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would love to share just a really simple practice that maybe your listeners could try out.
Please.
To tie in sound and somatics. Like, I mean, there's so much, they're so connected, but like so much of what we work with, at least in what I'm learning and practicing with sound healing, is using your own voice, using your own vibrational abilities to heal or to modulate, navigate your experience, or to be medicine for yourself, right? So for anyone who's like already comfortable, they can meditate. Maybe they've given themselves permission to like ohm or hum or make a sound. Get to that point first. Get yourself in a safe place and just practice taking a deep breath and letting out a sigh with a sound or a vibration. So and with anytime you're working with yourself with sound, and I shouldn't say anytime, if you're not singing, then don't worry about how it sounds ever. Focus on how it feels vibrationally. The worst sounding sound to yourself, if it vibrates your body the right way, might be the best medicine for you. So never worry about, and if anything, explore the weird sounds, because sometimes they're the sounds your body's never made that they need to make. So once you feel comfortable letting out a sigh, maybe humming or oming, I encourage you to, drop into a meditation or into a safe place, into a state, and check in with your body and feel anywhere in your body where there seems to feel like there's tension, stuckness, maybe pain, but usually not. It doesn't need to be pain. Just anything that's like, that feels physically tense, or it feels like, whoa, like energy doesn't seem to be flowing through this part of my body. Yeah. And if you're kinesthetic, tactile like me, I might even put my hand on that spot and start with a hum or an ohm that feels really good and safe to you. If you find that you're always going to the same ohm or hum sound, that might be what we call your home note, which is the vibrational frequency that your soul takes from life to life. It's your home note. It is the vibrational frequency of your soul.
It's your birthmark,
but
right?
Yeah, it's for your soul though. That stays with you. But to keep with the simple practice is, so just find the hum or the ohm, and once you're really dropped into it, you're into like a kind of a zen or even just a steady place. Start seeing if you can make a connection between the sound that's coming out of your mouth and that stuck place or tense place. And then let whatever sound that wants to come out, right? And just like letting go in a journey, once you let go of your mind, you'll notice that sound will almost certainly change, and your body will take over, and it'll start letting out the sound that needs to be let out to free up the energy in that spot, to remove that blockage or to free up that emotion that was stuck in that tissue. And the biggest hurdle to get over is permission, right? Is once you give yourself permission to make sound and to just do it, it's amazing how much healing you can do and just how much processing of energy and emotion. So I'll just do a quick example. So you want to do it with me and just
let's go.
I'll sound first and then you can. So we're gonna just sit here and just drop into your body. Feel the floor supporting you, or the couch or the chair. Let's just take a few gentle breaths into our belly. Each exhale, just giving yourself to whatever surface is supporting you. Just holding your entire body gently in your awareness. And without trying or searching, just invite in any stuckness or tension into your awareness that wants to be released. You can say it or just feel the invitation. What's ready to be let go of? And for me, coming through is tension in my jaw. And I'm going to start with a hum or an ohm. that feels really safe and comfortable. And once I'm dropped into it, I'm going to put my hands on my cheeks and let whatever other sound come through that wants to come through. So normally I would do that a few times through, or just till it feels like the energy was fully released from my body. And if you want to give it a try.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So for me right now, I've been having this little tiny lower back thing. It's like 98% better, but I tuned in and I was like, oh yeah, I can improve a little bit there. So I'm going to focus on that.
Okay.
And so first I would just start ohming, and then I would do one ohm or some type of sound, right? Some type of sound. It could be anything, right? And then put my hands there and do it again. Is that the right way to do it?
So make the initial ohm or hum as long as it takes for you to feel just dropped into the sound. Like, okay, here I am. Here's the sound. I feel in the sound. And then once you feel like you're able to kind of let go of the thinking about making the sound, you can tune in, focus on that area, or even put your hands there. And just any other sound, it can even just be the slightest shift, or it can be a full fuck screaming at the top of your lungs.
Yeah.
All of it. There's no such thing as a bad sound in sound healing. There's no such thing. There's bad application of sound, but there's no such thing as a bad sound. So
okay, perfect. Wow, that was very interesting. I started it, and then I felt pretty dropped in about 3 seconds into it. And so I put my hands there, and I noticed my vocal change drop just a little bit. And then as I tuned into that, I was like, I had to remind myself, I'm like, oh, you're doing a podcast right now. You can't stay here forever. Like I literally, I could have totally zoned out right there. And I haven't tried that before. So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Use that a lot.
Yeah. And even though it was subtle, you could tell once you started releasing that energy, you could hear the breakage. There were intervals, right? And that was showing me that there were waves of releases coming through, as opposed to before. It was it was a very stable resonance.
Yes, it was very straight line.
And then and that is indicative of the energy coming through in a different way. And so that was beautiful, man. And to come back to the saying, fake it till you make it. The first few times I did this, I was like, I don't think I'm doing it right. and the fake it till you make it was like, so then I just started making crazy noises to just see, like, okay, where can I go outside of this hum? Because if it's not happening on its own, or I can't sense it happening on its own, maybe if I just give my body permission to make other noises, it'll naturally, start doing its thing. And that was really powerful. I just started making all kinds of crazy noises, saying, like, screaming, fuck, or just like making animal noises, and just until, like, okay, now my body knows, like, oh, I can make all these different sounds. And then I drop back in, and your body will then start taking over, and you'll start really dropping into the exact sound that needs to be released from that spot. And so Thanks for doing that, man.
Dude, thank you so much for bringing me on that journey, because that is now another thing I'm going to add into that. Remember at the beginning, you were like, what tips do you have for, like, with psychedelics? That's my fifth one now, It's
Yes.
like that, exploring that with just my own sounds, right? And seeing
Yep.
what I can unlock, because, I've had some really unique, weird experiences now that I'm thinking about it. My buddy Eddie, you met Eddie actually? You met him on the third, I believe.
Mm.
He was part of Ice and Iron, black hair, glasses,
Mm-hmm.
awesome, just hilarious, like funniest energy ever. He's one of my besties, and so he does a lot of like Aramaic, no, Sanskrit, like
Chance.
yeah, chants and affirmations,
Yeah.
and I think it starts with M. I can't remember what it is. Not obviously.
Mantra.
Yeah, mantras. Thank you, I don't know
Yeah.
why I couldn't think of that. But we also love, I mean, like Eddie's big thing is he'll fall asleep to conspiracy theories, right? So like we love entertaining everything, because being an open-minded person, not necessarily believing it all, but being open-minded to it, is, I believe, one of the best things that human beings can be, right? Because it keeps you less and
Totally.
less closed in, right? And so we were doing a CE5 meditation, right? Which is Stephen Greer's meditation to contact interdimensional beings, and, all these things. And so, he had this thing, this mantra, I'm Nama, right? And it's Sanskrit. And I remember when we interacted with some cannabis out in Temecula. We were in the hot tub, and we were all, like 8 of us, chanting that for like 10 minutes, just over and over. And after a while, I was like, this isn't even words anymore. Like, I mean, I didn't understand what those were. I mean, he explained what they meant, but I understood them as words when I first started saying it. But it's like,
Mm-hmm.
if you say any word like 100 times, like if you say this, right? At first you're like this. The 100th time you're like, I don't even know what that is. I've never heard that before. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting how these things can change, right? And so yeah, I had an experience like that where, I mean, sound started taking me, and I was only under the influence of cannabis, right? I say only,
Yeah.
but I mean, in the scope of things that we think can do that to us, I mean, being in a sober state can doing it, drinking some cacao, drinking a good coffee, drinking anything,
Mm-hmm.
right? And also using cannabis. Any of these
Mm-hmm.
things can allow that to double down, because I feel like these things take an open mind, and a lot of times things that give us their consciousness to try on, like plants,
Mm-hmm.
different animals, things like that, can help us see things for the first time and be more okay with the idea of being open-minded, because we're giving ourselves that permission slip with that
Yeah.
hallucinogenic or that psychedelic, that, oh, okay, now we can accept things that aren't quote unquote reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you can just give yourself that permission slip at any point, then all of life becomes an adventure, and sound is
Totally,
one of the
man.
best ways to do that. Yeah.
Totally. And that's exactly why I brought it up, because specifically making sound and letting your body move how it wants to move
Mm,
are so powerful for moving energy, releasing stuck emotion,
mhm.
which, like, if you're just sitting there still in your thoughts and not letting the energy flow, it's so much harder to let go sometimes. I shouldn't say
Yes.
all the time, but having that permission and giving your body and your subconscious permission to make sound and to move when it needs to
Mm,
is life changing, period.
mm.
Because those are the two those are the two main ways that the energy of emotion flows in and out of us, right?
Yes.
There's a reason why almost every emotional state has a sound word, right? That we
Yes.
like ooh, or like,
Yeah.
like we have all these like a sound someone would make when they feel joy, or when
Hmm.
they're scared, or we have all these kind of classic, like, these stereotype noises, but it's because that is the sound of the energy flowing through your body, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, if anyone out there gets the chance to practice that and then go into their next journey with that permission, sound is just so powerful for facilitating your healing or helping you stay authentic in your experience.
Mm. I love that, man. Dude, this has been such an incredible journey down the rabbit hole, man. We got to talk about, I mean, literally everything and more that we had, created an intention for before we
Mm-hmm.
started the episode. And dude, I'm so grateful for who you are, for being the light you are, for just being so rad, man, to be able to do this. I mean, this is like a dream come true to me, meeting amazing people like you, right? Getting to connect so much in 40, realize, okay, this isn't the first time, like the first lifetime we spent together. Clearly it's like oh, nice to meet you in this lifetime, right? And then get to co-create magic on the show like this, man, both shows. I mean, this is seriously like, I got to pinch myself to make sure I'm real, and or this is real. I'm pretty sure I'm real, allegedly, but who knows? Jury's still out. But I'm really, man. I want to make sure I give you a chance to plug, where people can find you. If you are doing any of those sound healing things, like as a service, I would love for you to mention those. I know you're in the midst of that right now. So I'm just curious if you have anything like that available and where people can find you.
Totally. Yeah. So I'm just about to make my return to Instagram after 7 months off the grid, off the map. And it's feeling a lot healthier and more serving after that break. And I don't know if I'll keep this handle name, but I'm Bryan. I think I'm Bryan.committed or just Bryan committed. Either one, you should be able to find me, Bryan with a Y. And so my fitness product company is Committed HP, 2 M's and 2 T's in Committed. To just plug the mobile roller, which is the foam roll I invented. It is the best foam roller in existence, and it works really well with the practices I just mentioned. So like putting the tense or block part of your body on the roller and then letting yourself make this sound is like an amplifier of that release and healing. But grab a mobile roller. Maybe we can throw a coupon out there. Yes. Can you put that in the show notes?
Absolutely, 100%. Okay. Yeah, what I've been making it for other people is highly, just all caps or whatever. I don't know if that's possible, but that makes
absolutely
it,
all caps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Highly all caps.
Hell yeah.
At committedhp.com. And then my wife and I are incubating a vibrational medicine and somatic healing company, but we're not rushing it, but there's a chance it could manifest fast once it's ready. But for right now, just reach out to me through Instagram, or I'm totally comfortable sharing my email. It's Bryan@committedhp.com. Bryan with a Y, and Committed has 2 M's and 2 T's. And otherwise, yeah, man, look forward to hearing how this journey lands for anybody else, and just like so blessed to have this opportunity, man. It's just happening so perfectly, and just the knowing that we're on the path and we're following our calling, and yeah, just having that same shared experience of like, we were meant to do this and we've probably been doing this for lifetimes together is very real. So I love you, brother, and thanks so much for everything you do.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much again. And I love you too. And, I have one final question if you're up for it, man. All right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hell yeah. So if someone listening was just swayed by you to experience psychedelic medicines for the first time, what piece of advice would Bryan Osuna give to them to allow them to have the smoothest experience possible?
Well, so when you asked the similar question, the last podcast, immediately breath popped into my mind. But something that's coming through is like listen to your body, right? And because the reason I said that is like, when we listen to our body, we can navigate experiences with a lot more grace and kind of out of that left brain. And when we listen to our body, we find our breath, we find sound, we find movement, we find like the tools to navigate our experience. So to just kind of stay on that topic, and I think that's why when you asked me, I started making a hum because I was listening to my body, right? And my body wanted to make that sound. So just having that tool, because so much, as the Trevor Hall song says, in and through the body, right?
Yes.
So much of our experience in life, and so many answers to our questions are through our body. They come through our body and they're in our body. So learn to trust and listen to your body is my suggestion.
Spoken like a true wizard, man. I 100% agree with that. And it's been one of the main things that's helped me through the last year and a half of very deep spiritual work, and the work that allowed me to get there to begin with, right, is really listening to my body and learning to do that at deeper and deeper levels, so that I avoid injuries. I am happy within myself. I can avoid, stuff down emotions and move through them right away, and just be my best self, right? And that's, I think, if we're thinking about the hallmark way to say this, like, live your best life, right? Like, and that's what allowing like you to get into your body can do, right? And man, if I hadn't learned that, I don't know where I would be right now, but it wouldn't be nearly as fun as where I'm at now. So
oh yeah, man.
Alrighty, guys, as I stated in the intro, that initial look was all it took to allow Bryan and I to realize that we had a lot in common and had a lot of opportunity to learn from one another. Bryan is one of those individuals that can not only speak to the beauty that these medicines can offer, but also can do so in a way which relates to many different types of people, which is a skill I find very important in reversing the negative stigmas wrongly placed upon these medicines. If you listen to this and felt inspired to explore sound healing or any of the other services Bryan offers, then take it from someone who has had the opportunity to work with Bryan and reach out to him right now, as his ability to bring more substance, love, and passion into the lives of those he knows and works with is endless and only just beginning. And speaking of beginnings, as this podcast is such a new venture for me, I would be forever grateful if you could leave some love in the reviews on iTunes and rate this show 5 stars, as it helps me in getting the message of these beautiful medicines out to farther reaches of the world. Thank you to all of you who tuned in for the show, and Bryan, thank you so much for being who you are, for continuing to be of service in such beautiful ways, and for everything you do in the world. And until next time, my brother, may your journey be smooth and full of light. Aho.